Okay, so Dan, do you think Britishness is something that I have to learn, or is it something that I pick up naturally?
I agree with what's been said, but I have some caveats and I have some issues with that. A lot of countries around the world have decided to codify their rights and responsibilities. They've decided to codify the values that they have as a society. We haven't. That means that we are open to discussions and to improvements, but it also means that we're open for groups that don't share our values to attack those values. So, for instance, we all agree on tolerance, but there are people out there who don't. Okay, I'll talk about including that the BNP and including that Islamic extremist as well. They have certain views which are different from ours. What should we do in that situation? It's my view that we should actually codify the values that we have, and that's a process that I think that we should get started with vigour as soon as possible.
I agree with your sentiments, but I think there's a danger. I agree with the idea of it, but I think there's a danger of alienation by simply categorising a segment of society and saying you have to abide by these values. Yes, maybe, but also there's a danger of being counterproductive, that you don't want to then alienate people who were generally okay and good for society. So there's a danger of pushing people away rather than incorporating them.
David, I'd like to ask you a question. How can we define what it is to be British when the culture is evolving so much?
Well, I think the answer's in the question. It is British to have a culture that is evolving. It is British to have a culture that soaks in and allows other people and other races to come here to live and to enjoy their culture, their beliefs, and to practice their religion freely. And so I think the answer is that to be British is to be able to live freely within the country that we all exist.
Okay. Well, Dan, some critics would say that actually immigration is a threat to British culture. What do you think about that?
Well, one of the main tenets that we've discussed is tolerance. And over the past 300 years, people have come and gone from this country, and that's why we have such a tradition of tolerance. So I'd say that actually immigration is the thing that's created that British value more than anything else. So it's certainly not a threat to it.
Okay. Now, David, why do you think it's become such a topical issue right now?
Well, I think because I don't think it's only happening in this country. I think this is a global thing, that people are moving around a lot more in many countries. So Britain is experiencing that, and we're seeing people coming in from all different cultures, all different nationalities, and that brings a challenge to us, if you like. And I think Dan's touching on that in terms of how do we respond as a culture and as a community. How do we respond? Are we then forced into a position where we have to say, well, this is what we believe in. We believe in A, B, and C, or do we accept that people are going to come in? We listen to them. We argue with them. We debate. We listen. We discuss. I would say that that's the way to go. In my opinion, I wouldn't try and lay down a set of values.
Right, okay, so, well, coming back to Dan's point, we've mentioned on nationalism there as well. Where's that balance between being proud of being British and having the sense of nationalism as well?
Well, I think that if you're a patriot, then you love your country, and if you're a nationalist, then you hate other people's countries. That's a quote that's been used. And I think that it's very important that we're patriotic as much as possible. To pick up on what you said, I don't think we'd be forced into having a statement of values. I think those other countries that have them use them as an aspirational tool, and use something as they start off by saying, look, we want to be tolerant, we want to be inclusive, we want to have the rule of law, we want to have democracy, and 99% of people agree with them. That 1% that don't, you're actually having the aspiration that you want to bring those into the fold. Okay,
well, if we look at these countries that do have these aspirational values, do they actually create a more cohesive society?
Not always. That is a good point. If you look at, for example, the United States, and I think that this point of flexibility comes in, they have their very set in stone statements from their founding fathers, which they adhere to, and then you get a situation now where they had to change the Amendment of Rights, and it takes a lot of times to do that, the Bill of Rights, for example, on carrying arms, on weapons and so on.
So that's one aspect, but what other things do we have to consider, for example, Qudsi?
I think the important point is that it's a balance between people who are here and how they have to act in a certain manner, and people who have come. I think both on this point of responsibilities and duties. I think there's duties and responsibilities lie on both parts. So people who have come, I think they have a responsibility to be tolerant, to obviously accept the particular values that they have come to appreciate. But I think equally as importantly, and sometimes is often forgotten, is those that have already been here for a certain period of time have to understand the sensitivities of people who've come in from abroad. And particularly when a lot of these people are coming in from fleeing persecution and from civil wars and from conflict. Yes, it's brilliant that Britain allows these people to come in, and it's a great legacy of our British history that this happens, but also we have to be aware that we can't simply force these people to assimilate and to forget everything they have been, but rather we should be aware of their sensitivities and accept them.
So, David, I mean, in Sutton, how do you find this actually plays itself out on the grassroots?
Well, I think that, I mean, where I live in Sutton, I think that the people are tolerant and the people live peacefully together, they respect each other. And the example that Dan's raised there of America, I think is a good one. And I think that America, in many ways, has gone the wrong way. It's too patriotic. It tries to force its values on people that come in. And what you've got there is a much more racially divided society than you have here. And I think that we've proven the way to go is to allow people to breathe, allow people to express their views. Okay, and that's why we're strong.
We'll touch on patriotism later on in the show. Let me move to the audience. Does anyone here else have a feeling of what it is to be British as well? Moy, what do you think?
I agree with the majority of the panel, you know, about the patriotic, having the set core values. But to be British, you know, I was asking one of my friends earlier, you know, what do you associate being British? And he turned around and he said, pub food, fish and chips. So that's the culture side of things. And it's important to sort of, you know, understand where you fit in with that. So I've been born and raised in Britain, so I would class myself as being British. But going back to the audience's point there about having the best of both worlds, you know, being British, Asian, and that is what I class myself as, being British, Asian. So taking the best out of, you know, different cultures.
So in your own personal experience, do you feel you've ever been pressurized into becoming British?
No, never actually, to be honest with you. You know, I've been born and raised in Farnham, in Surrey. So, you know, the people that I've been with were primarily Caucasian. There's not that much ethnicity there. I'm at Kingston University right now. There's so many different cultures there right now. And, you know, I've always stood my ground here. I've always been British Asian. That's never really changed at all.
Some commentators say that actually we're breeding a sort of ghettoized society. So how do we get around that problem?
I think that's exactly true. I think that we can be quite complacent about saying, well, we all agree with tolerance, we all agree with respect, we all agree with the rule of law. Well, actually, we don't all agree with those things, which is why I think it's important to have these type of discussions. I think there's a lot more to America. It's not just the fact that it's got a Bill of Rights in the Constitution that's wrong with it. There's a lot of issues there. I think this country is actually quite good in terms of those issues, but that we need to do more.
So specifically within Britain, what should central government do to overcome this problem?
What it's done at the moment is or in the past few years, it's been having this discussion about Britishness. It's come up with the idea of having a Bill of Rights and Responsibilities, a statement of values, and looking at the Constitution to see how we can get people more involved in democracy. It's also set up a commission for young people looking at the historical basis of Britishness, which reports in April of this year, 2009, so I'd ask people to get involved in that. So those processes were ongoing. I think they've hit the buffers somewhat, as a lot of things have because of the economy. They're going a bit slower than they should be. Part of the reason for that is because, and it's reflected in the conversation that we've had today, once you start talking about Britishness, people disagree with it. They have different interpretations of what it should be, and it's very difficult to come out with a conclusion.